My parents found their biological daughter on a Tuesday. By Friday, she had already taken my bedroom. I discovered that when I came home from work and found two housekeepers carrying my bookshelf into the east wing. I stopped beside them. "Where are you taking that?" The older housekeeper looked embarrassed. "Mrs. Dalton asked us to move your things." "My things?" Before she could answer, my mother stepped out of my bedroom. "There you are." She smiled like nothing was wrong. "I was wondering when you'd be home." I looked past her. Pink curtains covered my windows. Someone had changed the bedding. Half my closet was empty. A young woman stood beside my dresser, running her fingers across the wood. She turned when she noticed me. "You must be my sister." Her smile was warm. "I'm Daphne." I smiled back. "Welcome home." I meant it. 3 days ago, I'd helped prepare the guest room for her. I'd filled the refrigerator with her favorite desserts after Mom spent an hour telling me everything the investigator had learned. I'd wanted her first week to be perfect. I just hadn't realized my room was part of the welcome gift. I looked at my mother. "Why are my things in the hallway?" "Daphne likes this room." I waited. That couldn't possibly be the whole explanation. "Is so?" Mom blinked. "So she'll be staying here." I laughed once. "That's funny." Nobody laughed with me. I looked at Dad. "You already showed her the guest suite." "We changed our minds." Without asking me. Dad folded his newspaper. "This room was always meant to be hers." I stared at him. "I've lived here since I was 7. And she's been without her family for 24 years. Those weren't the same conversation. "I'm not asking you to make her sleep outside." I looked around the room. "I'm asking why she can't have one of the other 6 bedrooms." Mom sighed. "Don't make this difficult." "Difficult?" I'd been home for less than 2 minutes. "I decorated this room with you." "I know." I still remembered sitting on the floor, surrounded by wallpaper samples. Mom finally laughed, kissed my forehead, and handed me the green one. "Whatever my princess wants." Now she looked at my room for barely a second. "Daphne likes it." Something inside me hurt. Not because of the room. Because she remembered that day too. It just didn't matter anymore. Dad stood. "The upstairs suite has been prepared." "The one beside the laundry room." "It's temporary." "For how long?" He didn't answer. Daphne finally spoke. "I can stay in the guest room if this is causing problems." Mom immediately took her hand. "No, sweetheart." Then she looked at me. "You've had 18 wonderful years. You can share." I looked at Daphne. She smiled apologetically. "I'm sure you'll make the upstairs room feel cozy." I nodded slowly. "I probably will." The housekeepers waited. I stepped aside. "Go ahead." They carried the rest of my life past me. An hour later, I went downstairs for water. Daphne was sitting at my desk. My grandfather had restored it with me one summer. My initials were carved beneath the center drawer. She opened it. "This desk is beautiful." "It is." She smiled. "I think it'll look perfect in here." I looked at my mother. "You moved the desk too." "It matches the room." "It matches me." Dad didn't even look up from his tablet. "Everything in this house belongs to the family." My grandfather gave me that desk. He would have wanted Daphne to enjoy it too. "No." The word surprised all of us. Dad looked up. "What?" "No." I walked over and rested my hand on the desk. "Grandfather gave this to me." Mom frowned. "Don't start." "I'm not starting anything." I looked at both of them. I'm asking why every solution seems to involve taking something from me. Silence. Dad answered first. "Because your sister deserves to experience the life she lost." "Then give her one." I looked around the room. "Buy her a desk. Buy her furniture. Decorate a room with her." My voice cracked despite my best effort. "But stop giving her my memories." For a second. Nobody spoke. Then Daphne gently closed the drawer. I'll take good care of it. She said it kindly, like she was doing me a favor. I let go of the desk. I know you will. That night, I sat alone in my new room. The walls were plain white. The furniture didn't fit. It looked like a guest room because that's exactly what it was. My phone buzzed. A message from work. Congratulations again on the Harper acquisition. The board loved your presentation. I smiled. Just a little. Work still made sense. You earned your place there. No one could simply decide someone else deserved it more. I typed back. Thank you, see everyone Monday. Downstairs, I heard my parents laughing with Daphne. I looked around the unfamiliar room. For the first time since she arrived, I wondered whether I still had a place in this family. Weirdly enough, Monday mornings were my favorite. The executive floor always felt alive before 9. People hurried between offices carrying reports. Phones rang before anyone finished their first cup of coffee. Someone was always chasing a deadline. It reminded me why I'd worked so hard to get here. I stepped off the elevator. Morning, Miss Dalton. Good morning. One of the analysts smiled. Congratulations on the acquisition. Thank you. The knot in my chest loosened. For the first time all weekend, I felt like myself again. My assistant hurried toward me before I reached my office. Miss Dalton. She looked nervous. The chairman called an executive meeting. I frowned. About what? I don't know. She hesitated. Miss Daphne is here. The feeling disappeared. I nodded. Thank you. As I reached the conference room, I noticed something else. The presentation already filled the screen. My presentation. 3 months of work. Only. My name wasn't on it anymore. Presented by Daphne Dalton. I stopped walking. My assistant lowered her voice. I saved the original. I looked at her. The version history is still there. For the first time that morning. I smiled. Thank you. Then I walked inside. Every department head was already seated. So was the board. My father stood at the front of the room. Daphne stood beside him wearing a tailored cream suit. She looked like she'd worked here for years. She hadn't even been part of the family for a week. Dad smiled when he saw me. Perfect. He waited until I sat down. As everyone knows, we've recently welcomed our eldest daughter home. Polite applause filled the room. Daphne will be joining Dalton Holdings. Another round of polite applause. Then my father looked at me. For the last 6 years, your sister has built one of the strongest departments in this company. I blinked. Your sister. He started listing everything strategic operations had accomplished. The Northbridge acquisition. The Harper deal. The overseas expansion. Every late night. Every negotiation. Every victory. My chest warmed. Maybe he had finally realized what he'd done. Then he smiled at Daphne. I'm confident Evelyn will have no trouble supporting her sister as the new executive director of strategic operations. The room went silent. I stared at him. What? Dad looked surprised. You heard me. My position. Your sister will assume leadership immediately. I looked at Daphne. She smiled. I hope you'll be patient while I'm learning. I turned back to my father. She doesn't have a business degree. She'll learn. She has no management experience. She'll learn. She's never negotiated a contract. Dad sighed. That's why you'll support her. Support. Such a nice word. It sounded much better than step aside. I stood. May I ask a question? Dad nodded. If it's brief. I looked at Daphne. What qualifies you to lead strategic operations? She blinked. My father answered instead. She's a Dalton. I waited. No one spoke. That's it. Dad frowned. What more do you need? A reason. I looked around the room. I worked in purchasing, then logistics, then risk. I spent 2 years as deputy director before earning this position. I looked back at my father. What experience does Daphne have? Silence. I looked at Daphne again. Have you ever managed anyone? No, but I cut her off. Have you read a financial statement? No. Led a negotiation? No. I nodded. So why are you becoming executive director? She lifted her chin. Because this should have been my life. The room became even quieter. I stared at her. My career has nothing to do with your childhood. It has everything to do with it. She gestured toward the room. You had opportunities that belonged to me. I earned every opportunity in this building. You had a head start. I had an education. You had parents. That one landed. For just a second. I couldn't answer. Dad stepped in. Enough. No. I looked at him. You've taken my bedroom. My desk. And now you're taking my career. Mom folded her arms. Stop exaggerating. I'm standing in front of a presentation with someone else's name on my work. I pointed at the screen. Is that exaggerating? Nobody answered. I looked at the board. Does anyone here believe this proposal was written by Daphne? Several people shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Bennett cleared his throat. No. Daphne's smile disappeared. Dad's face hardened. My decision is final. I looked at him for several seconds. Then I unclipped my employee badge. The plastic card had been with me for 6 years. I'd carried it through every promotion, every merger, every late night. I placed it on the conference table. If my work no longer matters. I slid the badge toward him. And neither does my title. Mom sighed. Don't be dramatic. I laughed quietly. I've heard that a lot lately. I picked up my bag. As I reached the door, Dad spoke again. If you walk out now. I stopped. You won't have a future at Dalton Holdings. My hand tightened around the doorknob. Work was the one place that had always felt earned. The one place where no one could take away what I'd built. Apparently, I had been wrong about that too. I opened the door. I guess we'll find out. No one followed me. I made it back to my office before the tears came. I locked the door. My reflection in the dark computer screen looked tired, my eyes were red, and my hair was no longer perfectly smooth. I wiped my face before anyone could knock. My phone rang. James Whitmore, grandfather's attorney. I answered immediately. Mr. Whitmore, I received your message. I need to know exactly what grandfather left me. There was a brief silence. I think we should meet. When? As soon as possible. I looked around my office. The awards. The framed photographs. The department I'd built. I'll leave now. Good. His voice became unusually serious. I believe your father has forgotten who this company belongs to. I frowned. What do you mean? I'll explain when you arrive. The call ended. I looked at my employee badge, lying on the conference table in my mind. Dad believed he had just taken away my future. I hoped he was wrong. Mr. Whitmore's office hadn't changed since grandfather brought me there before university. The same dark bookshelves, the grandfather clock, even the same bowl of peppermint candies on the corner of his desk. You've grown, Mr. Whitmore said with a small smile. I don't feel like it today. I imagine not. He waited until I sat down before sliding a thick folder across the desk. I looked at the tab. Dalton Family Trust. I signed this years ago, did I? You did. I don't remember. You were 19. He opened the folder. Your grandfather insisted you read every page. I smiled despite myself. He kept asking me questions afterward. He wanted to make sure you understood. I thought it was an investment portfolio. It is. He turned another page. It also contains 53% of Dalton Holdings. I stared at him. I'm sorry. You own 53% of Dalton Holdings. I waited for him to smile. He didn't. My father is chairman. He is chief executive officer. What's the difference? He runs the company. Mr. Whitmore met my eyes. You own it. The room became very quiet. I looked down at the papers again. There has to be some mistake. There isn't. My father threatened to end my future there. He cannot fire the majority shareholder. I let out a short laugh. It sounded almost broken. He doesn't know that I am. Mr. Whitmore was silent for a moment. He does. The smile disappeared. He knows. He has always known. I looked away. Somehow, that hurt more than losing my position. Dad hadn't acted out of anger. He hadn't forgotten. He had looked me in the eye, threatened to take away my future, and knew the company belonged to me the entire time. I closed the folder. What do I need to do? Mr. Whitmore slid a single document toward me. Revoke his voting authority. I picked up the pen. My hand shook once. Then I signed. An emergency board meeting was called for 3 o'clock. This time, I wasn't late. When I walked into the conference room, every conversation stopped. Dad frowned. What are you doing back? I looked at him. I was invited. I didn't invite you. No. I glanced toward Mr. Whitmore. The majority shareholder did. Confusion spread across the room. Dad laughed. Majority shareholder. Mr. Whitmore handed a folder to every board member. The room filled with the sound of paper turning. No one spoke. Then Mr. Bennett looked up. 53%. Another director adjusted his glasses. This trust. Dad reached for the nearest folder. His confidence disappeared page by page. No. He flipped faster. No. Mom stood. What is it? Dad ignored her. He looked at me. You knew. I found out an hour ago. He looked back at the paperwork. You revoked my proxy. Yes. You can't. I already did. Silence settled over the room. Mr. Whitmore spoke. Miss Dalton now controls the majority voting interest in Dalton Holdings. No one looked at me. They were all looking at my father. The man who had walked into the meeting expecting to introduce his biological daughter as an executive. The man who had threatened my career that morning. He looked small. Dad finally found his voice. I'm still CEO. For the moment, Mr. Whitmore replied. I stood. I'd like to make my first motion. Every head turned toward me. I moved to remove Arthur Dalton as Chief Executive Officer. Mom gasped. Dad laughed. No one is voting for that. Mr. Bennett looked down at the financial report in front of him. I will. The room turned toward him. He looked at Dad. I warned you not to replace the executive director. Another board member nodded. So did I. A third sighed. You put someone with no experience in charge of our most profitable division. One by one, hands began to rise. Dad watched them. He looked genuinely shocked. You can't be serious. Mr. Bennett answered quietly. We're protecting the company. The final vote was unanimous. Dad's chairmanship ended in less than 2 minutes. No one clapped. No one smiled. The company's secretary quietly collected his company identification badge. Dad didn't hand it over. Security took it from the table after he walked away. Mom looked at me. How could you do this to your father? I stared at her. You watched him do it to me this morning. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Daphne finally stood. This is ridiculous. She pointed at me. She's only doing this because she's jealous. I looked at her. Jealous of what? My family. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked at the board. Would anyone here like to explain what strategic operations does? No one answered. I looked back at Daphne. You've been executive director for 6 hours. What does the department do? She folded her arms. I don't have to answer that. No. I nodded. You don't. I reached into the folder Mr. Whitmore had prepared. Because your appointment is revoked. She blinked. What? You were never approved by the board. I placed the paperwork in front of her. Effective immediately, the position no longer exists. Dad slammed his hand onto the table. You can't do this. I just did. Daphne looked around the room. No one defended her. Not the executives. Not the board. Not even my parents. For the first time since she'd arrived. She was alone. Her eyes filled with tears. But I already told you. I met her eyes. You deserved an opportunity. You never deserved mine. She looked down at grandfather's watch. My watch. Without saying a word. She slowly unfastened it. She stood. Walked toward me. Placed it in my hand. I don't want it. Neither of us mentioned that she'd wanted it desperately 3 days earlier. I fastened it around my wrist. The familiar weight settled against my skin. For the first time in nearly a week. It felt like I could breathe. Mom's voice trembled. Can't we just go home and talk? I looked at her. Home. The word hurt. You gave my home away. I didn't mean. You watched them carry my life into someone else's bedroom. Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted to lose you. You should have remembered that before you started giving me away. The room was silent. Dad picked up his briefcase. This company won't survive without me. He walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned back. You'll fail. I smiled sadly. Maybe. I looked around the conference room. At the people I'd worked beside for years. My grandfather once told me one bad decision doesn't define a leader. I glanced at Dad. But refusing to learn from it does. He left without another word. Mom followed him. Daphne hesitated. She looked at me one last time. I really did lose 24 years. I know. Her expression softened. For just a second, I thought she was going to apologize. Instead, she said, You still had more. Then she walked out. I watched the door close behind all 3 of them. Mr. Bennett broke the silence. Chairwoman Dalton. The title caught me off guard. He smiled. Welcome to your company. I looked around the room. The desk. The reports. The people waiting for my first decision. Then I looked down at the watch resting on my wrist. Grandfather had once told me that family wasn't something you were born into. It was something people chose every day. My parents had made their choice. Now, it was my turn to make mine. The end. Thank you so much for listening to Dusklit Audio. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the story. Leave a heart or thumbs up in the comments if you want more.